Good morning, and welcome to Mobility Magic on a Monday. It's 11:30 a.m. This is your first Good Life Fitness session of the week for Instagram Live. And welcome to you if you're just joining me live. If you are joining for the first time, if you're joining us every week, welcome. A couple of new things to show you today, stuff we haven't covered before, so you will need a lacrosse ball and foam roller. And also, if you have one of these elasticated bands, one of these green bands, you've probably seen some of the personal trainers at Good Life use it before, or you have one yourself and you're like, how do I use it? Well, I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks to help loosen up your shoulders and your chest today. So bear with me. If you do not have a green band, I very much suggest it's a worthwhile purchase. Otherwise, what you could use a towel above the door and have a similar effect, but I will show you a couple of modifications for that. As I say, we're going to be using lacrosse ball, foam roller, green band, and we'll also be doing some standings and groundwork as well. So I'd love to see you all. Now, if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. As I said, if it's the you tune in every week, that's awesome too. If you want to watch this on replay, I'll be posting this video straight afterwards, and just about to turn comments off. But if you have any feedback, comments or insults, you can leave them in the video after I post it, after this session, and I will be sure to either get back to you directly, or you can message me to Fascial Stretch Simon at Instagram as well. So, I forgot to mention you might also need a broom. We're going to use that as well, just for a little bit of a mobility check. And so what I also like to do, we're doing shoulders today, a little bit of chest and shoulders and upper back. So we want to do a check-in so we know that this mobility work is helping us, if it's improving our range, etc., etc. So if you're someone who already knows I need a little bit of work, let's just go ahead and check anyway. So there's a couple of things we can do. We can do our overhead screen and kind of see if we're compensating anywhere. If both arms are even, we can check both sides. We want to make sure that we're not compensating through the low back, we're not getting any rounding of the low back. We also want to see if our shoulder clears as we bring it up and we're not compensating too much either side. So you can just take maybe a picture or a video of yourself doing it, just to see how that looks. You can also do a palms out overhead screen, just to see how that moves. And you can also do an arm up the back, and this is where I perform worst, I have to say, to see where mobility is either side. Do that the other side, bring it up your back, and see what the difference is. I would say, film yourself doing it just to kind of check in and see what your mobility is like. I think if you have a family member around, they'll probably tell you how bad it is, but obviously range of motion for me behind the back isn't so great, but let's use that as our check-in for later. So, broom, we're just going to do a little bit of a shoulder break here. This is a broom, I haven't taken the head off just to prove that it's a broom, because people have asked me, what's that pole that you have? It's just a broom, and we're just going to do some overhead reaches with the broom. Now, if you get it to just in front, that is completely fine. This is one of those things where we have to build up capacity, and we want to make sure that our shoulders are doing the right thing. And that as we bring our arms back, our shoulder blades are moving freely, we're getting a little light stretch on the chest, and we're increasing our range of motion as it comes over the top. As we reach back, we're just getting a light stretch, as I said, across the chest, through the shoulders. And if you have the range, you can bring it all the way around. But if it just comes back a little bit, that's okay. If it comes over the head, that's completely fine. And we're just looking to get as far as you can go. Okay, so that could be a really good way of just getting that shoulder to loosen up just a little bit at the start. It could also be a good check-in as well. So again, you could check now. How does that look? Has anything changed? I don't think for me it has too much, but you might find that suddenly your shoulder has all this extra range of motion. And we're going to come back at the end to do a little bit of stability work just to make sure that that's nice and stable. But for now, we're coming down to the ground, and we're going to look at doing a little bit of T-spine rolling to help improve that overhead range as well, because all these little 1% things that we can do to improve that range of motion are what's going to make a big difference with how far you can move your shoulder overhead, how far your arm travels back behind you, and we'll improve all those small things. So let's lay on the ground. I'm going to come down. I'm laying myself across the foam roller, just underneath where my rib cage starts. And the idea here is I'm just working my shoulders and arms up. I'm just lifting my hips ever so slightly off the ground, lifting up, over, and I'm just using this foam roller. And you could use something else that's round, that's completely fine. Something cylindrical is okay with this one. It could be the arm of a chair, be sure not to break it, and we're just reaching up and over. And again, the idea here is we're just slowly increasing that overhead range by lifting the hips. We could also introduce a weight if you wanted to. You can also just open up your back a little bit with a roll by giving yourself a nice big hug and just moving up and down that T-spine. And any pops and clicks that you get, that's okay, hopefully. Just your T-spine mobilizing, and that's kind of what we want. We want the T-spine to be mobile, we want the low back to be nice and rigid and solid, so you have a nice stable platform, and that this T-spine is able to twist and move a few degrees, because that's what adds up and helps you with that upper body mobility. So again, we're going to reach up, reaching back, we're coming back to center, lift our hips just a little bit, come over the top, make sure you're tucking that chin just a little bit. We'll just bring our arms back, just seeing if that's improving slightly. Next, again, we're just crossing our arms. And this time we're going to lean towards and away. And we're just rolling up each segment of the spine. We're just climbing up until we get to the bottom of the rib cage. And then we're going to work our way back down. And this time we're going to take a long roll. And we're just working on opening up that T-spine. Worthwhile doing a check-in here, seeing if it feels a little bit better as we rotate. And again, we're just trying to get this arm over the head. So that would be a really good opener for the T-spine. Now, the next part you can do standing or seated on the ground. I'll let you choose what you would like to do. We're going to use a lacrosse ball. I really like to do this one standing because I'm going to apply a little bit more pressure, but we'll do it on the ground for yourselves. Again, you can do it against the wall, and I'll show you a modification for that in a minute. So, did this a couple weeks ago. For those of you who remember, grab your lacrosse ball. You can also do this on the foam roller if you wish. It's a little bit more surface area, so it can be a little bit trickier, but the lacrosse ball has a small one. You can also use a tennis ball or a golf ball. We're just going to put this around the shoulder blade. So, taking the lacrosse ball, we're laying on top, pushing it towards the top of the shoulder blade, and we're going to start by sinking our shoulder down. So we're applying pressure down into the ground, and we're tucking our chin, and we're just lifting our hips slightly. So that would be the start. That's just us finding where the resistance is, where that pressure point is in the shoulder, and we're just digging into any knots or adhesions that we have there, any tension spots, and we're just starting to move our arm down slowly, and then back up. We're just staying on that spot, and if it feels like it's bound up, it's tight, we're just staying on that spot. We're just coming down, and then back up, and down, and back up. And we just start to loosen up that spot. So let's move to another one. Let's come a little bit around the shoulder blade. So up to you whether you want to move around kind of in this L shape around the shoulder blade, or just stay in a couple of spots that kind of work for you. The main thing is we're just getting rid of the big adhesions around the shoulder, or the big trigger points, I should say correctly, around that shoulder, just by applying a little bit of pressure. You can even lift the hips. I'm reaching up just to get that shoulder blade kind of open up and across. I can even move my arm across to the other side, and I'm just applying a little light pressure. Once that starts to ease off, we can then start to use that range of motion by bringing our arm overhead can bring it down, and we can bring it to the bottom pocket, sheath that sword, bring it all the way to the top. We're just going to do that a couple of times. And we're just going to do that maybe 3 or 4 times each side. You can do that in lots of different positions down that scapula. We're just looking to see what the lowest hanging fruit is so we can help get that scapula nice and mobile. So I'm going to do my right hand side against the wall. So it's white against a white wall, so that might look a little bit odd, but hopefully we can make it work. So let's do the other side against the wall so you can kind of see. So again, back against the wall, letting that lacrosse ball fall into the right position. We're going to sink our shoulder back and down. Sometimes this bit is easier on the ground, but if you've got enough pressure backwards into the wall, this can also work. And we're just going to sink a little bit, find that tight spot, any trigger points we have there. Once we're there, we're just going to start to move that arm a little bit. We can move the head as well if it's more towards that levator scap in the middle, that muscle that connects the head and the shoulder. And once you find the spot, you can start to move that arm overhead. Again, I can't say this is overly enjoyable, but this will help to loosen up your shoulder. So it's worthwhile doing. We're digging in to that tight spot. We're just getting that shoulder moving a little bit better. As we come up, we're kind of pointing our thumb outwards, and then we're kind of turning it down as we come down. We're also going to come up to that top corner, and we're going to bring it down with the thumb pointing to that bottom corner. Pull it all the way across. Now if you need to move to a new spot, because you feel that knot, that tightness kind of dissolve, feel free to do so. Kind of pull all the way up to the top corner, and we come all the way down, up, down, and up. We're just getting that shoulder to start to move. So now that we've done that, you can move to multiple spots around the scapula, the L kind of shape of that scapula, follow that border, see what's really tight for you. The main thing with this is we're just trying to open up our shoulders so we can pull our shoulders back. Again, you can do a little bit of a check-in just to kind of see where your shoulders are at. If it's improved, you can use your broom if you want to, or you could just do a brief check-in, see if your shoulders have improved overhead. I have a little bit on the right hand side. I might have also improved with bringing my hands up my back. So next thing we're going to do is add in our green resistance band or heavy duty. This is something you can obviously purchase as well online. These are always useful. Now I would also mention that this isn't ideal for someone that has shoulder instability or a history of subluxation or other contraindications by your doctor. So just be aware that this isn't for everyone. But for a number of people, this can be useful to increase your overhead range of motion. So first thing we're going to do, we're taking our green band. I have an attachment point on the wall. You can put it on top of a rack. If you're in the gym or at home, you could use a rack. If you're at home, you could put it above a door, a sturdy door that opens outwards so you don't break it. And we want to take the band, put in our hand, palm facing away. So that's the important bit there, palm facing away. So you have a nice anchor. I'm taking two fingers, and I'm putting it around the band. And this will enable me just to relax my hands as I do this, so I can take all the tension out of the fascia all the way up the arm. So I'm not sure if I'll do it on the other side so you can see. Again, I'm putting my hand underneath and up, fingers across the top, either side of the loop. And I'm going to sit back. So first thing, just relax your shoulder, let it lengthen, sit your hips back and down, and then just lower your chest towards the floor and let that natural passive stretch open up your lats, open up your back, open up that arm as well. And I'm just breathing in this position, just relaxing that shoulder, letting it stretch naturally. That tension from the band and our body weight is what's doing the work in the stretch. Now, you can use a towel as well, or you can just do a pillow stretch where you grab a door frame. That can also work in this position. I like resistance bands because there's a little bit of give in the tissue as you stretch, and often with a resistance band that will meet the relaxing tissue, take that tension with it as it stretches or returns to normal length. So you get that 2 for 1 with this one. Now, we're in this position, we've kind of hung out for about a minute, let's say. We're going to start to turn our wrist a little bit, just to kind of find new pockets of resistance. I can also start to shift my hips from left to right. I can just see, where that resistance is, or if there's anywhere else that's tight. Turning my hand in and out, in and out. I can also retract my shoulder blade and then return it to normal position. I can also start to turn my body as I exhale. I'm turning away from you, so I'm turning my body underneath my hand. The main thing I would point out for this one is you just have to keep your arm nice and long. Okay, often people try and curl the weight as they do it, but again, the less tension you have, the more length you'll create in the tissue. So, second stretch we're going to do, we'll go through both sides. I'll do the same side twice just so you can see me, but obviously switch the camera around if you have one of these. We're going to take our body away from the band. We're leaning slightly, so it's pulling, line of pulls from the shoulder, so this can add a little bit of work for the neck as well. I'm relaxing this position. As I lean away, I'm just stabilizing slightly and letting the band pull my shoulder across. Now, a few things you can do in this position, as I said. First one is that we can start to rotate that band, and with a light push down, I can get a bit of a bicep stretch. As my hand turns over and I push down to the floor, I can even turn my chest away slightly to accentuate that bicep stretch. Backwards and forwards. I can even lean away slightly and add a bit of a neck stretcher. So I'm taking a big sniff of my armpit as I do that. I'm smelling fresh. And then returning it to normal. Okay? The next stretch we'll do, so this one can work really well for the shoulder, the arm, the bicep, and it's just stretching out slightly in. Again, if you have any issues with subluxation, if you have any instability issues, I would work on stability before you do any more mobility with this one, because this is probably suitable for, I'd say, 50% of clients that we see. So this could be useful to create mobility, but you always want to follow it up with some stability as well, that we'll do towards the end in a minute. So, stretching away, we're now going to turn our chest away, and we want to take a slight lunge position right here, and my arm is straight out behind me. With this, we're actually not going forward, we're coming straight down. So you just want to create a position where you're nice and stable. If you need something to hold on to, like a chair, that can also work. So, hand is pointing down at the top of the position, hand is pointing up at the bottom position. So, hand is pointing down, hand is pointing up. I'm lunging down, slightly forward, as I said, coming up. Just coming up. And what you should notice is as you turn your hand up, as you come down, you should get a chest stretch, a pec stretch all the way across, and you should get kind of a few more fibers than normal you would with the normal chest stretch. So again, find a stable position, you need to hold on to something, do that. We're going to come down, so turn the hand up, making sure my arm is straight out behind me, and that the anchor point needs to be somewhere around eye level, or eye level, and that tends to be the ideal position for the traction piece of this stretch. Again, we're going to go through the same side, but I'll show you the first position on the other side so you can see mechanically how it works. So hand is away from me, my fingers go over the top, I'm sinking my hips down a little bit, and I'm just sinking them back to get a little bit of traction through the band. So that line of pull is going to help open up the tissue all through the lats, into that serratus area, into that teres major minor, even a little bit more into that lat as it feeds kind of under the arm, all the way down to the low back. So this can be a good catch-all stretch, but I would probably just use it as a stretch rather than a shoulder mobilization if you're someone who gets laxity, as I said. So let me just switch so you can see me a little bit better, because again, we're going to go through the other side. So if you haven't already switched, make sure you do. So we're sinking down. You can even, as a bonus, move your back foot into different positions just to see if there's a spot that helps to catch that tissue. As you add a rotation, you can turn your body. If you feel more stable in this kind of semi-squat position, just stay there. I'm just turning my body, letting the band do the work. So again, as you relax and the tissue relaxes on that one side, that band will get more and more tension feed back into it. You'll get more relaxed or pull away. Whereas when you have something that's not elasticated, you have to do all the work. So with this, at least, there's some kinetic energy kind of built up that's trying to pull me away, and I can just sink my hips back. So let's come into our second position stretch, where we're going to do a little bit of a lat stretch from the side, but also a little bit of stretch through the shoulder and the bicep. So if you haven't already turned it round, let's do that. So imagine that I'm on my right hand side now, okay? So make sure you switch. My hand is going to be rotating, my body weight sinking away from the band, so we're building up a little bit more kinetic energy in the band. We're just turning our hand up and down, rotating slightly, up and down. And we're going to push down with our wrists, get a little bit of a bicep stretch. We can turn our chest away. And I can turn it around the other way. Try not to go for too long, we don't want to get any nerviness or pins and needles if you were prone to those in these kind of positions. We're just trying to get a little bit of a bicep stretch in as well. Now, we're going to lean away as we did in the first stretch. This time, obviously, you're on the right hand side or the right arm. We're going to add a little bit of traction to the head and neck, lifting up slightly, giving our armpit a little bit of a sniff. Move your foot if you need to stabilize, and again, lean away a little bit more if you need to get that traction. I'm now turning, so again, you need to be on the opposite side to the one we did earlier. So I'm on my left again, you need to be on your right. We are stepping into a lunge position, and the idea here is we're going straight down and slightly forward, but not just a forward lunge. So the idea is we're changing levels, and as we do that, we're turning our hand up. So right now it's facing down. We're lunging slightly forward and down, hand goes up, and I'm turning my chest away, trying to keep my arm nice and straight. Trying to keep that arm straight. So the idea here is, as I turn my body, as I'm coming down, I'm moving through those pec fibers, and I'm loosening up that shoulder. So what you should find now is, I've done this arm twice, I've probably got a lot more range suddenly, so we definitely want to do a little bit of stability work here. But if you've done both sides, you'll suddenly find you get a lot more range through the shoulder, and it should feel a little bit looser. So again, very important to do stability work here. So there's a couple of things we're going to do. After you've done that chest stretch, we're going to make sure that we're doing a little bit of PNF work and stability work. In fact, I'm going to give you a little bit of a bonus since we have time. We're going to do a banded bully stretch just to get that shoulder blade into a nice centrated position. So first thing we're going to do is bring our arm through the band. We're going to take a step forward, and we're just going to let our body dip a little bit, and that will pull your shoulder back a little bit behind us. So if we were talking about that position where we bring our thumb behind us and that initial screening, this can be another really good one too. It doesn't work so well with the towel. As I said, you can do some of the other stretches with a towel, but this one will also help to get your shoulder back. So in this position, again, dip down if you need to. The idea here is it's just passively stretching your shoulder blade or shoulder back and down. And we're just going to sit a little bit more centrated. So again, a little bit of a bonus. If you want a little bit more intricacy with that one, leave me a message afterwards and I'll try and cover it off with a little bit more time in the future. For now though, we're going to do our wall clock, and then we're going to do a little bit of our floor based loading patterns just to kind of help. So if you remember, covering off in brief, a little bit briefer than normal, we are standing with our body square to the wall. I have a bulkhead, so I can't go all the way overhead, but if you have a wall that's tall enough, then the idea here is that you're going all the way up and over and around. Okay, so I'll start off in the first few positions, then we'll do the other side. We're going to start with a hand against the wall, probably about start with the normal clock, about 5 or 4 o'clock, somewhere around that time, okay? We're pushing our hand into the wall, we're pulling our shoulder blade back and down. So now that you've got that nice and loosened up, we want to make sure that we're adding some stability. So my hips are square, I'm pushing into the wall, my shoulder blade is pulling down my back. I'm now moving to the next position, I'm pushing into the wall. So I've gone, somewhere around 3:30, 3 o'clock, and we're just going to move through a few positions. And as you find that you run out of range of motion and aren't able to keep that safe, solid position, you may find that you need to change or rotate your hand. But we can also keep our palm against it, or we can have our palm, the back of our hand against the wall or our palm, and again pulling our shoulder blade back and down our back as we add a little bit of stability back in to that position. So as we get overhead, let's imagine I'm actually against the wall, so I'm just going to reach up against the bulkhead and I'm pushing my weight into that shoulder, that arm, because I want the muscles to fire to really try and capitalize on that new range of motion. So we're just imprinting it into the brain, and as we come around this clock position, we're staying square and we're helping the brain to kind of recognize where that arm is in space. So again, if you're someone that already has the range but feels a little bit unstable or doesn't have the strength, it could be that you need more stability, especially for someone who has hypermobility. You may want to skip to this part just to stabilize. Again, as we get around the corner, we're just pushing into the wall with the back of our hand. So again, doing the same thing on the other side. I'll keep it brief on this side, but you can always pause the video or review, because remember, we post these straight afterwards. We're pushing into the wall, and the idea here is that we're pulling our shoulder blade across our back, and we're working all the way through each position until we're all the way through the clock, making sure that we're pushing with pressure into the wall, pulling our shoulder blades across our back to create a nice stable base. So last thing we want to do is add a little bit of downward movement. Now, 2 options with this one. We can push straight into the wall, like we're doing a kind of scapular push-up, and we can move around the shoulder. Still from this position, I'm pushing in, but I'm just moving around that shoulder, just trying to get a little bit more articulation. I can come down and I can come up. That's option 1. Or if you want to, you can do it on the floor with a little bit of loaded movement, and this will also help with your wrists as well. So we come down to the floor. We're just going to come into our kind of loaded position. It has many names: loaded beast, cat dog, a cat camel, cat cow position. We're going to just push our feet into the ground, and the idea here is we're keeping our shoulders stacked over our hands. So with this one, wrists are straight underneath our shoulders, pushing into the ground, squeezing our shoulders down our back, getting a nice stable base. Can also help to build up capacity for push-ups as well. So again, you can do this as just an isolated exercise. I'm saying the wall clock's a great way to just add stability. It may not be mobility that you need, because just remember, we need suitable amounts of mobility and stability to get good range of motion, strong positions, and build strength. So make sure that you know which one it is, and if you don't quite know, reach out to us and we'll help you out. So that is all for this week. Last thing we need to do is just do a little bit of a check-in, see if our range of motion have improved. We can go up the back again, a little bit of improvement on that side. Probably not as much on the other side, we didn't do as much work on that side, but I'll probably do a little bit myself straight afterwards. That is your session for this week. We'll be reposting the session afterwards, so you can review it in your own time if you need to kind of go through it again, or replay, or look at any areas in particular that you didn't find wanted to go over again. And if you have any comments, any feedback, anything you'd like us to cover in session, please message me or leave it on the video we post afterwards. We don't always read the comments you leave in the session because we don't have the capacity, the ability to do that. But again, if you have anything you would like us to cover, please message me or leave feedback. Otherwise, next week, back at the same time, same place. And I bid you a good week and see you soon.